There he is. No, it's Tanner. How's it going, big fella?
Oh, life is good, man. I am so happy that we're finally doing this because we've had some technical issues, but we've also had some life stuff get in the way, and we're finally back. We are so back.
We are so back. What are we talking about today? Well, I know on the Big Fellas podcast today, a topic that is very heavy on both of our minds and probably the minds of everyone listening to us right now, stress. And we're just going to talk about all facets of stress, but of course, we've got stress eating, which a lot of people are dealing with. If anyone here is dealing with some stress eating, let us know in the comments right now. Cast your predictions as to what we might talk about or whether or not we'll solve yours. I will say, though, Noah's got a document here that'll give you a run for your money. We're going to talk all about that.
So. Yes. I cooked up something last week that we're going to be using for our clients, and when we're going to be launching the group program, this is going to be thrown in there. But I think what might be best is we have a ton of really good information to share with you guys today for the podcast. But I want to start for those that are joining with us live, like ask us some of your questions. If any of you struggle with stress eating or just stress management in general, maybe you're over reliant on stress management mechanisms that you don't necessarily feel great about, maybe you are over reliant on any sort of medication, whether it's over the counter or other types of medication, like going to Applebee's.
Not me.
Inside podcast joke. Or maybe you drink a little bit too much alcohol, or maybe you don't get a lot of sleep because of it, or maybe you skip workouts when you're stressed. There's a lot of different things. So when we get started, or as we're getting started, if you guys have any questions or just talk to us about, stress eating with sweets is my kryptonite, somebody says. Definitely stress eating lately. Wife had a stroke last week, and solo parenting our 5 kids is weighing on me, pun intended. Holy cow. Yeah, that's
Wow.
serious. Wow. Best wishes to you and the entire family.
Yeah. Incredible. That's first off, good on you for stepping up. Not that you had much of a choice,
Right.
but I would crumble under that kind of pressure. That's insanity. It's of course we're going to turn to our only coping mechanism, at least the most easily accessible one. That tends to be why we turn to food, because it works. I think that's sort of the part of this that we don't address all that much, is that stress eating works. Otherwise, we wouldn't do it. Is it good? No, it's the same way that drugs work for what you're trying to use them for. It's just the consequences are terrible.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I speak on a lot of stress eating. I call it, when done incorrectly, it can be the most inefficient way to eat possible. And it's about making it an efficient coping mechanism. Scrolling to avoid stress is a really, really good one. Getting lost in social media scrolling is a big one. That's a great point. Finally, I'm terrified of taking meds for weight management, but I have such a stress-induced binge eating disorder. How can I manage stress triggers to stop the binging? Now, Nova, right there is what we're going to be talking about today. So, Mike, let's just deep dive into this. I think we should start with our relationship with stress eating, and then we're going to dive more into what stress eating is psychologically, physiologically, hormonally. I'm going to go into a little bit more of the science behind stress eating on a basic level and how we can use that to improve ourselves. So, Mr. Mike, are you a stress eater?
I was and continue to be. Now, do I still use it as a stress coping mechanism? Not nearly as often. There are periods of time where I feel like it is happening and I can curtail it and I can stop it before it gets out of control. But there are times where I don't notice it's happening until it's happening. And then I'm like, that's interesting. I'm eating something that I didn't plan to eat. Why? And I have to back it up and figure out why it is that I'm doing it and stop it from happening. But one of my big stress triggers back in the day was disappointment in myself. I am the hardest critic of myself ever. And anytime that I felt like I did something wrong or that I didn't do something to the best of my ability, I would say, well, at least I could shove my fat face full of food. Can't mess that one up. So it would be a little bit of self-harm and self-punishment, but it mostly came from stress.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing that I kind of found out about myself is I rarely eat When I am stressed, when I am going through the stress, it is afterwards. When I come home or when I get back and I'm done with the stressful whatever situation. Obviously, most of it's, work related, sometimes it's family related, sometimes it's relationships, whatever. When okay, so let me dive into the science a little bit to kind of break it down in an easier way. So, we don't eat when we're stressed, we eat when we're done being stressed. And there is a physiological science behind it. So, the longer you have cortisol, which is the stress hormone, there's also epinephrine, also known as adrenaline. That's also a stress hormone. But adrenaline is short term. Cortisol was what has active and flowing through your brain when you're stressed for a long period of time. People call it fight or flight mode when their sympathetic nervous system is active. When you're out in the trenches of society and you have lots of cortisol flowing through your system, that's when you're feeling the most stressed, obviously. Cortisol is known as, the stressor, the natural stressor of the body. When we come home, your body is switching to a different branch of your nervous system, and that stress eating or that stress level, that sympathetic nervous system, the fight or flight mode starts coming down. In your parasympathetic nervous system, people call this the rest and digest system, starts activating. So essentially, your body is physiologically unwinding itself. Your body is going from fight or flight mode, putting more blood and attention to your brain and your muscles to be in active action mode, and that's unwinding. And then your body's like, hey, here's a little bit of endorphins, here's a little bit of dopamine, you relax. That's why it feels so good to plop on the couch after a long, stressful day. Everybody loves that feeling to pop on the couch, take your shoes off, and just kick it for a couple minutes, half an hour, chill, talk to your family, scroll on your phone, whatever. That's why that feels so good for everyone. The reason most of us stress eat after the stressor is because during that switch of stress hormones to, more feel good hormones, when that switch is happening, these are coming down, these are coming up. Our brain wants to reinforce this. Our brain wants to send the happy chemicals to the fucking moon. So what does your brain look for? Your brain looks for high dopamine foods that it's been craving all day. It shifts. It's like, I want more of this good. This stuff feels great. I want to keep this feeling going. Let's keep this party going. That right there is why you are physiologically stress eating when you get home after a stressful day of work, because your body is reinforcing, oh man, I'm finally unwinding. Let me continue to unwind and keep these happy dopamine feel good chemicals going using food as that crutch. And I can say, when I was doing my research on this and really, diving deeper into the science on it and stuff, I knew a decent baseline around it, but when I really kind of learned more of the arms of the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system, it made so much sense because that's exactly how I was and how I still get sometimes. I'm not perfect, like Mike said, stress eating does work to an extent. You got to know yourself. And ultimately, we think it comes down through everyone is going to handle stress differently. It's at the end of the day going to come down to asking yourself, hey, how do I manage my stress? Answering those questions wholeheartedly first is usually the best first step.
For some of you out there right now, and you may not realize it, or you might realize it. It took me a while to realize it, and when I did, I was sort of devastated. Food is the only thing that's really triggering those happy dopamine signals at this point. There's really nothing else in your life that's doing it for you. That doesn't mean that you're living an empty life or anything, but it just means that you've maybe not been able to identify those other things that make you happy, or you're just superbly stressed. So the only respite that you get from that is food. For me, at a certain time in my life, when I was talking about eating basically despite the perfectionist in me, I was in a relationship that wasn't all that healthy. It wasn't healthy at all. I was in a job that took up a lot of my week. It was 60 something hours a week or so, plus more. And I'm sure some of you out there are like, oh, I work more than that. This is to you.
I work 60 hours a day.
Yeah, Noah's working 60 hours a day. So it's almost okay if he's stress eating a little bit. And then I was living at home, so I didn't have a lot of control over anything. And food was kind of the only thing I had any control over. It was the only thing that made me feel good because I was being pulled in every direction by people that really weren't giving me too much back. whether it be at work or that relationship, and the food felt good, so I kept going back to it. It's just like any drug, it's got its drawbacks, and it manifested on my body in ways that took me a long time to fix.
Absolutely. When people get stuck or feel stuck, when they get the feeling of being stuck, where they are, lots of work, lots of relationship stress, they feel like like in your example, working 60 hours a week, it's about what takes the edge off for you. Everybody finds that differently. And for a ton of people, it ends up just simply being food because it's low barrier to entry. It's very easy to go and grab more food. It's very low barrier to entry, doesn't require very much effort, and it feels good. Effectiveness wise, there are a ton of really quality ways to lower your stress. Is it going to be perfect? No. Is it going to feel a little weird when you try something new to manage your stress for the first time? Absolutely, because you don't know how effective it's going to be. But there are some proven methods to stress management that are helpful towards a fitness journey in general. This is going to, I'm a big believer in virtuous cycles, in vicious cycles. A virtuous cycle is something that it's a pattern of behaviors that feed into one another, that only get better, and they only grow, and the long-term effects of each part of the cycle only get stronger. So if we can find those positive habits, those positive reinforcements that start helping each other once again over and over and over and get stronger and stronger, and building your effectiveness and ability to handle stress, that's what we're looking for, because and food can be a part of this, and it should be. But there's also a way to have it as a vicious cycle. And a vicious cycle is the exact opposite of a virtuous cycle. A vicious cycle is a couple habits that don't serve you, that feed into one another, that slowly spiral down and make you more dependent on the handful of vices that you already have proven to yourself aren't the greatest stress relievers. So you're more stressed more often. You're usually harming other parts of your body, like, we said earlier, like there are non-indicative, not phenomenal ways to stress eat, and that's a big part of it. But there's also leaning into, maybe you're over reliant on drugs, or you can't sleep, or you're missing your workouts, and then there's a lot of guilt around your eating. That is what a vicious cycle would look like, and that's just going to make you dig a deeper hole, and we're trying to get us to prevent ourselves from doing that. And Mike, when we talked about it before we went live, what do we think is step one when it comes to identifying?
I'm blanking now. I might have to stress eat through this because I'm stressing out.
Stress audit.
Yes. Oh, that's fantastic. Okay, do you want to talk about the questions
Well,
or
let's first talk about like what it is and why we think this
yeah?
is. Let's talk about some of the self-auditing you've done for some of your people, and then kind of I'll dive into the questions after we kind of talk about why we're doing this.
So something that you and I have both seen, because as soon as I saw what you put up, I was like, nothing like this is really out there as far as I'm concerned. There's not a lot of action steps when it comes to dealing with stress. It's more so just like, oh well, breathe, or do like a specific exercise or something like that. And
Meditate.
I try to tackle it differently. I try to like find the root of the issue and figure out like what's causing it. We have to look into what's causing it first, and we have to look at it face first and like bring it into the light. You have identified a good number of questions that will help people to identify that, to look into
Yeah,
themselves and figure out what the sources of their stress are, and to be able to look at them a little more clearly. I think a lot of us don't realize why we're stress eating. We're just trying to solve an issue that's there because we feel it. We feel that there's something that needs to be placated, something that needs a band-aid, but we don't know what it is. And the food just kind of blanket covers the whole thing. And I think this really helps us to narrow down what that is that's causing it to happen.
absolutely. And before I dive into the questions, you actually, the way you just spoke about that brought up a really good analogy for this. So everyone close your eyes and visualize this with me for a second. You have a barrel. You and your emotions are a large barrel. And all of your stressors, all of the things that are bringing on these negative emotions are poking a hole a new hole in your barrel, and your barrel is full of water. So your barrel is now leaking water every time a new stressor gets added to your life. And what you've been doing this entire time is just sticking a finger to plug the hole, and it's a temporary solution to a long-term problem. The only way to fix a leaky barrel is to get a new barrel. So what we need to do is stop looking for the short-term solutions that we know aren't going to work long-term and just get a whole new barrel that's made of iron maybe this time, that's not leaking water all the time. But you understand what I'm saying. We need to stop looking for short-term solutions that require long-term solutions. This is a long-term problem. A short-term solution to a long-term problem never works. Like Mike said, this is kicking the can down the road. So this is step one. What we're about to go over, these questions we're about to go over, we believe is the greatest step one to finding that longer term solution to managing stress in a healthier way. Nobody's ever perfect with this, but this will help. So, 6 questions. Number 1, and also when I'm
Question number
done,
one, do
these
you
are
realize you're the only person in the world that has any stress? Yes,
right,
you are.
right.
You're the only person that has ever experienced stress.
Couldn't be
Understand that
me.
you're weird for it.
Yeah, couldn't be me. I'm never stressed. You can ask Mike. These are writer downers. Pen and paper. If you're watching on YouTube, pen and paper. Write it on your phone. Put it somewhere. I want you to genuinely ask these questions to yourself and actually give yourself an answer. Put it in an email. Put it somewhere to see it later. My cat is adamant about that too. Okay, number 1. What are your primary stressors in life? What patterns, tics, words, phrases, actions, behaviors do you do when you know, oh, I'm stressed out, aren't I? I know I get stressed when I start to ruminate. So thoughts repeat in my head and I start talking to myself. It makes me seem like a fucking psychopath, but that's what happens when I get stressed.
You don't have
And
to
I usually start,
try to solve it in this
no,
step. You don't have to try to put
no,
a
this is
solution
not,
forward.
we are not trying to solve anything right now. We are simply identifying.
Just workshop
So,
it. Write down if it feels like it's just a little thing, put that little thing down. If it
yeah.
feels like it's a big thing and you're worried about having to solve it, you don't have to solve it. Just put it down.
Is it work? Is it family? Is it your cat screaming when you're recording a podcast? There's a lot of different things that it could be doing.
My
Number
cat
2,
chewing on wires.
yeah, exactly. Number 2, how often do you feel that feeling of stress? On a weekly basis, how badly and how often are you feeling that immense stress that leads to negative behaviors? Now, obviously, there are very different levels of stress. There's, oh man, I don't know how long it's going to take for me to finish this presentation for work stress. And then there's, I have a terminally ill family member stress. Those are 2 very different things.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about the stuff that comes up most often because obviously there are bigger things at play that you can never predict. So keep that in mind. But how often are you feeling a decent amount of stress that will cause possibly any stress eating?
And again, you're not trying to solve it. You don't have to make any excuses. Just if you know that it's happening, you just write down that it's happening. That's all it is.
Numero trace. What are your primary coping mechanisms now? Are they harming your health or fitness journey if you are on one? And by harming, I mean, is that stagnating if you're in a fat loss journey or a fat loss phase and your coping mechanisms is eating? That could obviously be counterintuitive to one another. What are your primary coping mechanisms now? What do you most reach for first when you're stressed out? And do we think, I mean, I almost guarantee you it's negatively affecting your health journey. Whether you're not trying to lose weight, whether you're doing something else, it's negatively affecting your health because stress does that. Number 4, if eating is one of your coping mechanisms, what foods are you reaching for? What are those comfort foods? I know one of them for Mike is Oreos.
It used to be that I would kill a whole family pack.
Oh, yes.
And then when I wanted to be, I wanted to watch it, I would get the smaller one, the ones that didn't reseal.
Health.
So there's only like 30 of them in there. I
Health.
considered that an upgrade, and yeah, and it's stonks. I really did at that point. I was like, you know what? I'm eating less, and I was eating less. It's just I was still eating too much, and I had not yet fully identified what I was doing. That was slick as hell.
Dude, he is different level right now. He is attacking me for love. Okay, number 5. Do you have a tendency, when stressed or not stressed, do you have a tendency in general to eat even if you're not hungry?
Be
Are you
honest.
known for boredom eating, stress eating, snacking a little too much when you know you don't need the snack? Do you have a tendency or a track record of doing those things? And then finally, number 6, what happens when all bets are off and you say, fuck it? What happens when you just say, fuck it? What foods are you eating? What different mechanisms are you doing? This cat is about to get thrown out the window.
What does it
What
take to get
happens?
you to that point? What things have to happen for you to say that? Because I know that there were some sort of like fail states where I knew that I was approaching a fuck it.
Absolutely.
So if you can sort of identify what the warning causes of those are, if the air starts to get still around the times where you're about to F it, like what does that look like?
The skies start darkening, the storms start brewing.
For real though, I mean it can feel that way too. Like it's funny, but it really does kind of feel that way. I started to get a sense of like, you know how the birds start scattering before a storm. Like I really started to feel that once I started to identify the creeping feelings that would eventually culminate to a fuck it. So again, notice that none of this required you to solve it. None of this required you to put a solution forward. But just being able to look at it and have it written down on a piece of paper where it's no longer hiding in the dark anymore.
Somebody says these are such good questions. I'm kind of mind blown. Good. I'm happy to hear that. This is about addressing the problem numero uno. And honestly, that is what's most effective for finding your way through this, your journey through this. Number 1 is always going to be just learning more about yourself, figuring out what your stress eating mechanisms are. Learn about yourself. What does that look like? And once you know what you can do, he is rubbing up against the mic, so I have to hold it like this. When you
that Bob
know
Barker microphone, damn.
what to do, you can then find a solution. Now, I think we should spend the last few minutes talking about some really high quality solutions, the most effective ways for stress eating, finding more of those virtuous cycles and non-vicious cycles. But again, this is about finding something that works for you, and something that I haven't really formally written down yet, but I thought of earlier that is incredibly important and has helped me through some of my most stressful times. Leaving your phone in another room and not having it attached at your hip every single hour of every single day. That's a huge thing. That's where 99% of my stressors come from, is my phone.
You and I both work from our phones. Our livelihoods live in these phones that we're streaming from right now. And we both understand that it's not only important, but possible to put it away. Like, we have to. I have to. I can't stare at this thing all the time.
No, that work-life balance is so important for us. But even for people who don't work from their phones or don't work from home or anything like that, you're still getting stressed out. You are still stuck in negative feedback loops when you're on social media. You're comparing yourself subconsciously to other people. You are hurting yourself sometimes when you're on that phone. It feels like you're distracting yourself, and you are, but there are easier, more healthier ways to distract yourself. When was the last time you went for a walk with nothing in your hand? It was just you, nature, and vibes. You in the sun. When was the last time you did that? Ask yourself. It seems like a real simple thing, but I guarantee you it's a lot longer than you think it's been. Some of my greatest ideas and greatest self-discoveries have come when I'm just on a walk and I'm letting my brain cook. I'm just letting it, like, just seeing what comes up. I come up with great ideas, and it's like when you're in a shower and you get in an argument with somebody and you come up with a great comeback, but you're like 3 weeks late because you're in the shower thinking of it instead of on the spot. And you're like, man, why am I such a genius in the shower? It is like that on steroids when you're walking, especially if you don't have any distractions and your phone is a distraction.
I get in my best arguments when I'm naked and wet. I always have to, if I'm going to argue with a stranger, I have to take my clothes off and it has to be in the rain.
Mike gets into a lot of arguments.
I get into a lot. That's why I'm leaving Jersey this week. They're driving me out.
Oh, Also, have we officially announced what's going on? I've been kind of like putting posts out on YouTube talking about like some big changes are happening. Have we announced what's happening, or do we want to keep that cards to our chest for now?
We can talk about it.
Mikey's
Well, I'm first off,
moving.
I'm moving, yeah, so I'll be out of here, and that's we could have a whole episode just about that in terms of like doing something that you're scared of doing, because there's a lot that has to do with my weight loss and my personal growth and everything that went into my decision to finally leave here. I've been here most of my life, and I'm sick of it. And I stayed here because it was familiar. And I just realized like the number of things that were keeping me here were so minimal. And it was keeping me from living a life that was truly worth living. So we'll cover that in another episode because I would like to deep dive into that and hopefully maybe trigger someone else to make those necessary changes.
100%. I would love to. Let's do that for sure. But yeah, so that's why things have been a little wiggity whack on our end as far as upload schedules, live streams, stuff like that. There's been a lot of
My
moving
fault.
pieces that we've been not necessarily entirely just his fault, but there's been a lot of moving pieces going on. And like we've, alluded to a lot in the past, the group coaching is coming. It is coming soon. But obviously with this move happening, it's thrown some time constraints, some physical constraints, and we're adjusting to things. But don't worry, good things are coming.
I
And
think maybe by either next week or the week after, we're going to have some kind of pre-sale or a sign-up thing ready to go. So
absolutely,
if you're interested in coaching, I mean, summer's coming up, but we're not in it just for the summer. We're in it forever. But you get that added bonus of you feel better for the summer, and then we carry you through the summer and we carry you through the fall and the winter and everything, and we do this forever. But if you are interested in getting not one but two coaches and a kick-ass curriculum that we've been building now for months,
yep,
and we've got some mini courses. This stress thing that we're talking about here, the stress eating and management,
will be a mini
is
course.
yeah, this is an entire mini course. There's going to be probably some coursework that we've got there. This is a whole written document that you'll have total access to anytime you want. I'm sure we'll have some video resources attached to it in some capacity at some point. This is just one of the many things that you'll have available to you, along with our live guidance
Yeah.
and calls every week. Like we're really packing a lot into this, and we're excited to share it with you.
Absolutely. I wasn't even planning on doing a whole pitch, but hey, that was beautiful. Very well done, my friend. If that does sound like something you're interested in and you guys are watching live, shoot Mike or Noah a DM on Instagram. You guys know where to find us at the biggest fella __ on all social media platforms and at Mike Needs a Plan. Shoot one of us a message, say, hey, I'm interested in signing up. Like we said, it depends on when you're sending us this message, but the group is either about to come out or it's coming out or it's out, whatever. Shoot us a message, ask about if you are interested. We can talk more about it. We'll shoot you a message when it's ready, get you in there first things first, because we'll probably keep it at a relatively controllable number to start to make sure things don't just catch on fire and everything goes. And yeah, we have to start stress eating. But I think this has been a good idea. I don't want to dive too much more into it. I think step one with this episode is going to be enough. Really chew on those questions. We could talk for another 45 minutes about some of the healthy stress mechanisms that we use, using exercise and nutrition and what that actually looks like, avoiding some of the other negative stress eaters and stress, management systems. But what we really want you to take away from this episode is running that audit with yourself and being honest with yourself. Stick your finger in your chest and ask yourself the hard questions. When was the last time I went for a walk? What happens when I say fuck it? You know, am I actually giving myself what my body and my mind deserve? Probably not. Probably not.
If you're watching on YouTube right now, you can go back and you can pause to write those
Exactly.
questions
You're
down
you're,
and
you're
really
cheating if you're on
absorb them.
YouTube.
Yeah.
You're cheating on YouTube. I missed question 4, but I loved what it said on steps 1 through 4. Question 4 is, if eating is a coping mechanism, what foods do you reach for? And what are the comfort foods? But for those of you that are watching live, it will be on YouTube in a few days. Those of you on YouTube, you guys already got that stuff written down. You paused it, you wrote it, you took your notes. And that's what we have for you guys today. I'm very happy to be back recording, and feels damn good to have the Big Fellas Pod back. One thing that I wanted to make very clear, or I was just like annoyed with, is the fact that every podcast seems to like start and then die after like 6 or 7 episodes because everybody and their grandma has done a podcast. I also used to do one in college with my friend. We did about 10 episodes and then we fell off and we quit. And we are not, that is not this. This is
No.
going to be around for a very long time.
This is now every force in the universe has been trying to stifle us and stop
Dude.
us and slow us down, and we've lost a few episodes
We
because
have.
of technical issues. But here we are still doing it, and we're going to keep doing it, because if we stop when things get difficult,
Yeah,
we'll never get to see what happens if we keep going.
exactly.
We'll never get the fruits of our labor, and that's true about every journey and everything that you could be doing to benefit yourself or improve yourself. If you stop when things get difficult, you don't get to win. And we're here to win. Got any final bits of advice to give to anyone? Because I've got one this week.
You've been relaying the final message to me, so I'm going to give it to you this week.
Take a chance on yourself, whatever that may be. To some of you, immediately a thought popped into your head of something that you've been putting off or waiting for the right time to do. Whatever that thing is, just go ahead and do it. If it's a thing where you're about to have to leave your job, or you want to leave your job, obviously you need to take some steps before that. But there are some steps you can take. You can start looking for other stuff. Go hang out in the bathroom a little longer than usual and make the company pay you to look for a new job.
Boss makes $1, I make a dime.
That's why we look for new jobs and take chances on ourselves on company time. Take a chance on yourself, whatever that may be, whether it's your job, your health, or whatever it is. Just do it.
Bet on yourself.
This Friday, I'm doing it. You can do it too.
The number one bet that has given me 100% returns is betting on myself every time.
We know each other because I took a bet on myself. So.
And I took a bet on making a fucking duet. And now we're here.
Group coaching
on the internet. Group coaching coming soon. All right, gang. Thank you all so much for watching. Those of you on YouTube, just understand that even though the upload schedule has been off by a week and a half or so, we're not going anywhere anytime soon. This will be a long-term thing. We are not, every other podcast on the internet that just quits after a few episodes. This will be coming. This is a big part of both of our long-term plans. We love doing this. We love interacting with y'all. So they are coming. If you have any, topics you want us to cover, drop them in the comments on YouTube. Like, subscribe, share this with a friend that is a stress eater, is stressed out all the time. Send this to that friend, because that would mean the world to us, because we genuinely think that when we look at the internet for, other solutions to stress eating, it's pretty barren. And what we've tried to do here today, and with the other stuff we're adding to this curriculum and the group coaching and just with our content in general, we're trying to attack it from a different approach that's actually going to yield you results. So if you can, like, subscribe, and send this to a friend, it would mean the world to us, and I'm sure it would mean the world to your friend or family member, whoever the hell you do send it up to. Send it to your cat. I don't care. Send it to someone. But yeah, with that being said, be kind to yourself, keep it simple, and we will see you next week.